Hello and welcome to the Story Behind the Stories, your weekly look at the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. Thank you very much for taking a little bit of your time and spending it here with us on NACTV. I'm Eoin Devereux with the Banner Press, welcoming you to the June 20th edition. June, end of June almost. The year's just flying by, it feels like right now. But it flies by when you've got so much interesting things that you're able to cover in the pages of the newspaper. And that's what we got for you this week. And we got a big component of that from my fellow journalist here, Josh Jackson. Josh, good to have you here this week, sharing some of the details of the week that was.
Hi, happy to be back here again, although I feel like I say that every time, and somehow I'm still back here, so glad that you guys like me here. Also, speaking of June 20th, happy summer solstice, the longest day of the year.
Oh yes, the longest day of the year, which means the next day will be a shorter day, which means we're on our creeping towards death and winter.
I don't like it when you put it that way.
Enjoy your summer, everyone.
Happy summer.
Well, fortunately, before we get into the creeping death of winter, we have the energetic fun of summer. And Josh, you were able to experience a portion of that this past weekend with our wonderful community, our Filipino community, that is a wonderful part of Neepawa and the surrounding area, and part of their celebration. Now, you were out in the field, you were out and about, and you were able to get some of the pictures and details.
Yeah, of course. I was boots on the ground, and let me just start off by saying, just a wonderful celebration. It was the 5th annual Filipino Heritage Celebrations, and you might be wondering the significance behind that. Well, let me tell you, June 12th is a very important day for our Filipino community, as it is the Philippine Independence Day, a significant national holiday that commemorates the country's declaration of independence from Spanish colonial rule, which happened on June 12th. 1898. So it was a big weekend of celebration here in Neepawa. They kicked things off on Thursday, June 12th, with the flag raising. It was great to see a lot of representatives from the community there. I know MLA Jody Byram was there, the mayor was there, and just a lot of people came out. And one thing I really appreciated is the people doing the flag raising all dressed up in traditional gear. So it was really cool to see how a different culture celebrates their Independence Day. Like we see how Canadians celebrate Canada Day, Americans celebrate Independence Day. So it was really cool to get another perspective. And let me just say as well, the party rolled into Saturday with an absolutely amazing parade. Now, I haven't been here for 9 years, but let me just say, I think that was one of the more impressive parades that I saw within the community. So hats off. It was great to see so many people come out and represent their region of the Philippines. And it was nice to see Dan Mazer out there and different businesses too getting involved and showing off their pride and spirit.
It's very interesting and it's an intriguing afternoon. And it is nice as well to see people who were not of Filipino ancestry or anything like that still coming out and supporting it. That's the great thing about Neepawa. It is very cooperative and very much, we're blending together so nicely. You see so many Filipinos out and supporting events here in Neepawa. You see so many quote-unquote Canadians or, nationalists or whatever you want to call them, the locals, out at these events as well and learning about the heritage and learning about the culture. So it's turned into quite a sort of annual event that everyone in this community really looks forward to. Just a little aside here, we don't have this in the story, but I had heard about this out and about on the street there. The parade, of course, is a big event, and we have all the different floats, all the different dances, all the different festivities. One of our motorcycle enthusiasts like to go out as well. I had heard this, and thank goodness it turned into just a little bit of vehicle damage. One of the motorcyclists was doing a wheelie, apparently, over down by the giant tiger there, lost control of it, flipped the bike over, smashed the bike up. Fortunately, that individual was not hurt, a little bump and bruise here and there. Really more the pride was sort of damaged more than the body, which is, fine. But, be careful out there. Motorcycles are no joke, even during parades. And it just got me thinking about, wow, they had all that stuff out there, all those festivities, all these different genres of it. They, for the most part, are really showing up Canada Day holidays. You know, how come, maybe we need to organize a Canada Day one, but, you know, as Canadians, it's too hot. It's too hot to be out in the sun for that long, you know. I know I'm in this room and the temperature's slightly higher than normal, and I'm already starting to die. I'm slowly.
Well, Eoin, hear me out. A two-man parade, me and you, marching down on Canada Day, down Main Street. We won't get the permits or do anything proper. We'll just march down and wave at anyone who comes and sees us. I think that's a real great plan.
If I were about 30 years older and had a beverage and had a summer beverage or two in my belly, I probably would.
Fair enough.
But, you know, our Canada Day celebrations, which are going to be coming up at the end of the month, the start of July, are going to be great as well. And that's something we're going to be talking about in a future edition of the Banner Press. But this week, it's all about Filipino culture, Filipino independence, and the Filipino spirit, which they have brought to Neepawa. And it's wonderful to see. If you want to learn a little bit more about that, you can find it right on our front page of this week's edition of the Neepawa Banner Press. Carries over onto page 19. You can learn a little bit more. He's got interviews with a lot of the representatives that were a big part of putting this thing together. So I hope you'll take a few minutes and learn a little bit if you weren't able to be out and about on the day of.
And let me just say, I absolutely love our Filipino community, and anytime I go to an event where they offer me pancit, I'm in. Pancit is like now one of my favorite foods, and I'm glad I can be in what I am self-proclaiming the pancit capital of Manitoba here.
You're acclimating to the community again quite well and quite quickly. All right, let's shift into the pages inside of this week's paper. It's not all fun and games. It's not all wonderful. Sometimes we got to get a little bit serious, and to a degree, this next story is an example of that. Casper Werhan, our other journalist who works for the Banner Press, was able to get this information, learn a little bit about an unfortunate occurrence that happened as of late for one of our newer arrivals to Neepawa. Patsy Kimball has only been in the community about 3 or 4 months, a short period of time, and is she really starting to enjoy the community? She loves the camaraderie, she loves the spirit, she loves the people. But unfortunately, some of the terrain became a bit of an issue recently, and she shared her story with us. She does have a need to use a mobility scooter, as many people here in Neepawa have started doing. They are very convenient for those that have back or leg issues or of a certain age in order to travel from one place to another in a brisk manner. But some of the roads, some of the sidewalks, some of the curbs are not mobility accessible. And Patsy ran into an issue like that in which hers went over the side and she went tumbling over. And fortunately, it was not a serious injury. It could have been a serious injury. And she wanted to share with the Banner Press, she wanted to bring to light the issue of that and wanted to find out what was happening in terms of the town working on something like this. So Casper got her information. Casper reached out to the town of Neepawa as well and learned a little bit about it as well. So this is a very informative story. It's 2 full pages almost in which we gave to this to sort of spotlight this. And we try and get both perspectives on this. So I hope that you'll be able to read through it and understand where Patsy is coming from, where the town of Neepawa is coming from. They understand the frustration and they understand the situation, and they're doing what they can to alleviate the situation. These things take time and they do take money. So this is not something that's going to be solved within a week's time. But it is something we're very happy to be able to share with you and to sort of inform you on. Is there anything about it yourself, Joshua, you want to throw in on?
Oh, I have so much highlighted, Eoin, so here we go. I'm just going to dive right into it. So, after the fall occurred, while sidewalks and roadways in disrepair can be a hazard to anyone, they do provide additional challenges for those with limited mobility. In particular, the height of the pedestrian access points on the sidewalk also contribute to the issue of accessibility. So basically, to my understanding, you have your curb where the road so it's just kind of like there's a lip there.
Yeah.
And motor vehicles Like, if you're going, you obviously have a lip. Like, if you're on a bike or something, you have to go up. But sometimes those are steep, steep lips by the looks of it.
There are a few where they do have the little dip in there, and there's a few that don't have them. But that's sort of generational thing. Some of those curbs are from 20, 30, 40 years old, and we didn't sort of have these types of scooters and mobility items that needed to be a part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm. And within the article as well, a few problem spots were mentioned. Main Street, Hamilton Street near the Curb Block and Roxy Theater, and as well as Davidson Street near the RBC parking lot. And one thing that really stood out to me, and before I get into it, I would love to give my flowers to Casper for this article. They wrote it so well and so good, and just very appreciated. But in scooter safety guides, it states that if a sidewalk is unable to be used, that the best backup option is to use the roads. And I feel like it could be dangerous going down Main Street, driving behind cars if you don't even have a flag on your scooter. I feel like that could be very risky, and if I had to be in that position, I would also be terrified to do so.
Oh, most definitely, because let's be honest, if you've been in Neepawa, if you've driven in Neepawa, and even if you've walked in Neepawa, you know there's some real morons that still have a driver's license out there. There are some times, on some occasions, where I've had coworkers come in after they walk down to the Fresh Mart and say, "Oh my God, I nearly got ran over by some idiot who wasn't even paying attention." And
that's me. I'm coworkers.
You're the idiot that wasn't paying attention?
No, I'm the idiot that almost got run over.
And actually, it's happened to me. I've been one of the idiots that nearly got run over as well once. And it's frustrating to sort of see the complete lack of sort of attention being paid. Now imagine you're an individual on a mobility scooter that doesn't quite honestly have the capacity to jump out of the way. Me, even though my knees aren't quite as good as they used to be, I can still dodge and weave if I have to in a critical situation. But not everybody has that. And especially on a mobility scooter. Those things, if you've seen them, they're not exactly known for their zero turn radius.
No.
No. But this is a conversation I think needed to be had. And I'm glad that Casper was able to bring it up. Casper was hoping to get the specifics on the exact location of where it occurred. That's something we probably will be following up on in a future edition of the Banner Press. And we don't want to throw the town of Neepawa under the bus, because this is not just a town of Neepawa issue. This is an issue that happens in every community, in every town, in every city. And it's something that does need to be addressed. So hopefully this is a way we can start that conversation and maybe get things rolling, as it were. You see what I did there?
I did see what you did there. I also had a pun lined up that I was going to... oh, here we go. Speaking of needed to be addressed, Eoin, something that you've had your pulse on over this last little bit, and I assume you will for years to come, is the new, well, I won't say new, the newly proposed idea to have a new rec facility within the town. Now, Eoin, this is something I know that's very near, dear, and important to you as someone who has been probably to more Titans games than anyone else who watches this show combined, so...
Well, I've been to a couple games here and there. There are a few diehards, though. I will give the shout out to you diehards, and you know who you are. They're at every single game. You have your very specific spot at the Yellowhead Center, your seat, your location by the boards where you like to sort of watch the games. Always appreciated. The Titans very much appreciate you, and the Yellowhead very much appreciates you in terms of supporting the Yellowhead in that manner. But in regards to what we're talking about for the future, if you read last week's edition of the Neepawa Banner Press, you saw right on the front page Ken Waddell's story. It was a basic outline of what this meeting was. It was a review of the future of recreation and event centers in Neepawa and for Neepawa and the surrounding area. There is a need. We need to start planning this. And being honest, we probably should have been planning this about 10 years ago. But, hindsight is 2020. You can't look back. You just got to look forward at the task at hand. And that's what's happening. So if you go on to this week's edition of the newspaper and you go on to page 7, you're going to find a little bit of a more elaborate story following up on Ken's from last week explaining the 4 potential sites for an event center in Neepawa, some of their pros and some of their cons. And there's a lot of pros and there's a lot of cons on each and every location. And everybody sort of has their own dream of where they think it should be and what it should be. And that's what that first meeting was all about. It was good to see that interaction. And it's very interesting to me to see what's going to forge ahead from this, what decisions are going to be made, and what action happens and when it happens. Because, Josh, I'll be honest with you, I very much hope that we can get an event center of some type, a more modern facility for Neepawa. I don't know when it's going to happen. I might not be around by the time it happens, but I'd like to be around by the time it happens, but who knows? Things move at their own pace. But as a young person, who still has his original knees, and,
These bad boys are go for a few more years.
what is your take on what Neepawa should be doing and moving ahead on this plan?
Ooh, I think they need to be ambitious, and I know that may be a little bit of a shock to hear, but I feel like Neepawa is very, I don't know what I'm trying to say, very mindfully conservative. We're not big dreamers. We're like, we just want a new ring. But no, I think we really need to shoot for the stars with this one. I feel that if we see other communities like Minnedosa and Carberry have more modern facilities than us, there's really no excuse why we shouldn't shoot for the moon and see what we can do. I would love to be able to see how this goes. I think we definitely need a new ice surface. I would like to see multiple gyms in there, as well as a decent event center. I mean, we could dream something like Stride Place in Portage and have the gym and the walking track in there. We can have climbing walls like they do in Southport. I think we have a myriad of options and a lot of things that we can explore. So I'm very excited to see. But if it's one thing that I will very firmly advocate for, the exterior of this arena, much like the Carberry Arena, needs to have a good functional skate park. That is a hill that I will die on, and that is a personal hill.
That is a half pike that you will die on.
Oh, I like that.
But yeah, not to be the wet blanket.
Be the wet blanket.
And again, I'm glad we're on the tour right now in terms of the shot. Actually, if you can go back to the tour right now, I want Josh in the picture here because we're going to have a little bit of a debate right now. We're going to do the little back and forth here. Point, counterpoint, Josh. You make valid points on that.
Sometimes I do.
But at the same time as well, Neepawa does not have the money it needs to be able to do that. I really wish they did, but in terms of the tax revenue, they don't have it. Portage, I want Portage. Don't get me wrong. I would love to have okay, maybe not Portage. Portage does kind of but Verdun would be a very good example. But the cost would be a real issue as well, especially since we're going with the hospital. We're going to be getting a new high school. We're going to be building several new suburbs. That's going to really jack up property taxes as well. I think it is a fine balance between sort of getting what we want and building for the future and keeping things economical, because just even buying a house nowadays is so expensive, let alone putting the property taxes down year over year. Essentially, I am being a wet blanket. Eoin, the wet blanket Devereux. I mean, I thought I was going to get past that nickname from high school, but apparently not. So, no, it is what it is there. But you're right in that we should dream big. And actually, there is a letter to the editor in this week's edition, and we're going to get to the letters a little bit later, but I think it's important to reference it right now. There's 2 letters that actually talk about the arena project, one of which is from Ross McBride, a loyal and consistent fan of the Neepawa Titans. He's one of those ones from earlier that I said is at every game, even more so than I. And he said, you know what, if you're going to do this, do it right. Don't half-ass something. Full-ass it. If you're going to do something, use your whole ass. That's very important. I'm paraphrasing slightly. Ross didn't have that in there. But that's the meaning and the gist of what he had to say. When you look at a place like Dauphin, comparatively population-wise, we're getting close to Dauphin right now, and they have an 18,000-seat, or 1,800-seat arena that can do major events. If you look at Verdun is a town of 3,900 people, much smaller than ours, but they have a facility, a new facility of about 1,300 seats. They're able to figure it out. Why can't we figure it out? Why do we shackle ourselves down to certain expectations? And Ross makes that point, and it's a valid point. There is some argument in that, but that's what a newspaper, a letter to the editor, is all about. It's about that back and forth. It's about having that opinion, even if you think it's right, even if you think it's wrong. And like I said, oh boy, we're going to get there a little later in the show. And there was another letter as well from Monty Simon. He was a former counselor, and he lives in Alberta now. And he actually made a suggestion about we got to build, and we got to build big, but we got to build smart. So he actually put a link to this construction company that actually builds all across North America, but does it in a very unique way. So that's what, I don't want to go too much further into it, but pick up a copy of the paper, look for the link, type it into your computer or your phone or whatever, and just take a look for yourself. And if you have an opinion on that, why don't you send it our way as well in a future edition of the Banner Press. But let me throw over to you. What did you think about those letters from Monty and Ross?
I agreed with them. I think that Monty's was very interesting, and it presents a unique opportunity. Should we sacrifice the aesthetic quality of the outside of the building for a bigger building and more space, or should we have something that looks conventionally attractive, if you understand? I think it all raises a lot of big issues. And Owen, I'd kind of like to go back to your point here of talking about we do need to be realism, we do need to be realistic. Yes, but I would like to say for a town, and this is a general statement, this is not, and I don't want it to come off the wrong way, but for a town that likes to boast that we are the third fastest growing in both Manitoba and Canada, I think we need to act like it. And I think that's where we need to start scoping and dreaming about the arena. I'm assuming, now this is me assuming, a lot of this is going to be a crowd-funded effort, so why not dream big and have the fundraising to back it up? Neepawa is a very generous town, and I feel like a new potential arena is something that affects us all and something that people want to see. So I am of the belief you build it, in this case, you build the plans, and people will come and step up.
You make a very good point, and I'll throw this out here as well. Just to be the enemy, just so that you people have somebody to root against in there. To build a facility, I think similar to Verdun, you need about $18.5 million. If we can get 5 from the feds, and if we can get 5 from the province, which I think is very much doable, I think that's a good start. If we can find a way to get 5 from Neepawa and the surrounding RMs, a little difficult, I think, but I think it is doable. That leaves about $3.5 million for fundraising and donations and all that. The community of Niverville, which is the second fastest growing in Canada and the fastest growing in the last census in Manitoba, was able to do it. And they were able to build their own facility. And they were able to do fundraising. I'll throw this out here. And this is my opinion. And my opinion is not right. It doesn't, or maybe it is. I don't have faith in the community of Neepawa and the surrounding area to be able to raise $3.5 million. I do not have faith. I want to be proven wrong. Please, as a collective, prove me wrong. There's nothing I would love more than to be able to come back here 4 years from now, 3 years from now, and eat crow and say I was an idiot today thinking that Neepawa and surrounding community didn't have the stones to get it done. I would love more than anything else to be proven wrong. But we only got a few minutes left. There's so much more we got to talk about. And since I've ticked people off already on this, Josh, let's get a little early and let's tick people off some more.
Ooh.
We don't usually talk about our letters to the editor, but we had so many letters to the editor this week that we had to bring it up as part of the story behind the story. We had 9 letters to the editor. We actually had 10. But we just ran out of room, and that one will appear in the next edition of the paper. And about half of them had to do with a letter that we had put in the previous week's paper. We're not going to get too much into the weeds on this. There was an individual who had an opinion about the flying of flags in Neepawa, and they shared that opinion. Might not be your opinion, might not be my opinion, but they shared it. They didn't state it as fact. It was opinion. It was on an opinion page. And everyone sort of came out and shared their opinion in opposition of it. Well, most of them were in opposition of it, which is your right, which is what makes a paper as strong as it is. I wanted to bring it up for the pure simple fact that there were one or two people that said we should have never put that letter in the paper. I respectfully disagree. When you start restricting these types of things, it's a slippery slope. It is not news in any way, shape, or form. It was an opinion. An opinion I don't particularly, personally I agree with. It's an opinion I didn't personally agree with.
Same here, to put that one on the record as well.
But it's an opinion that has the right to be heard. So when one or two people came and said, you were wrong for doing it, I respectfully disagree. An importance of democracy, the importance of a society, is to be able to say things that you don't want to hear. I didn't particularly want to hear it. I didn't particularly like hearing it. I disagreed with the assessment. And I'm very glad that the opposite side of the equation came out in full force and shared their perspectives on it. So in a way, this is a very good thing. First off, it lets us know that people do pay attention to the paper still. They're not just hung up on social media, and that they're willing to share their opinions when they're passionate about it. Wonderful to see, and I'm very glad to see it. So that's all I wanted to throw out. Is there anything else, Joshua, you wanted to throw out about that in particular?
Sure. I'll take a stab at it. I would just kind of like to point towards Ken's quote in his editorial, and that has resonated with me. I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. Although that is not a quote by Ken, it is by someone else that he featured in this column. I think dialogue is important, and I would just like to say I'm very impressed to see the response, that people do care, that people are passionate about issues like these, and we can host kind of a forum, a dialogue in the paper. As long as people, honestly, at the end of the day, as long as you do it respectfully and don't be an absolute dick about it, like, have some common sense, of course, but I think discussion is healthy. It's when people start attacking people and trying to divide people that's an issue. Nothing, as we've seen in the world, division isn't doing anything to help us. We need to unite and be stronger together. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk on this issue.
Oh God, are we going to start having to sing Kumbaya next?
Yeah, if you want to. Kumbaya, my lord. Kumbaya. Okay, I'm going to stop because I'm not a singer. Sorry to anyone who had to hear that one.
Well, on that note, I think maybe it's about time we wrap it up. We didn't even have time to talk about everything else that's in the paper. Our sports section, a coverage of the Little Valley Jamboree, Immigrant Services' new partnership with the Salvation Army. Very exciting to be able to share that. But that's why you need to pick up a copy of the Banner Press and see for yourselves. And always remember, if you have any story suggestions or opinions, you can send them our way at news@neepawabanner.com or give us a call at 476-3401. We do appreciate you, and we appreciate you continuing to support us and NAC TV. So until next time, thank you, and have yourselves another fantastic week.